So my first foray into fifths was to try inverted, like playing a left-handed guitar as a right-handed person, with the thinnest and thickest strings on opposite ends now. Then I threw in an extraneous augmented fifth in there too, to give us another EADGB tuning to try familiar fingerings with a twist, the lowest string being a bass guitar's lowest E string. But that's another video. With everything we've learned, it's time to try true fifths tuning now. This time going a half step higher from a bass guitar's second lowest string to a fourth higher A using a special .007 high carbon string. Now this is going to be a general theory and demo of everything I've discovered so far, which may be a little nerdy and boring to people who take a more loose approach to how everything works. But on the other hand, this might be a little too simple for some of you hardcore theory nerds out there. This is coming from Said Too Much. If you're familiar with drop tuning, you know that the first octave of a major scale is easily done using the same hand position and fingerings utilizing those open notes. Now curiously, when moving your hand over to continue the scale, you get a different fingering, but also the same fingering between the next two strings, just like we had on the first two. And yet again, the last two strings share another slightly different fingering. For the same minor scale, we don't have the luxury of all the open strings being in it, but at least we can still get a whole octave out of just two strings. And an extra fifth out of a third string, until you're going to have to do some serious finger stretches to keep your hand in the same position. Or we could use the major fingering starting at the second fret of the F string, since the minor scale is just a different mode of a major scale. Remember, with the fifth interval utilizing open notes, we get more musical distance as opposed to the standard fourth and major third interval of a standard guitar. In the issue of playing leads over top a rhythm guitar, I would recommend using a capo or partial capo to place you higher up the neck. Again, you're still able to cover more distance utilizing those open strings, so hammer-ons and pull-offs potentially have more notes you could do. Partial capoing in particular could offer quite interesting combinations. I switched to an A-sharp 1 to A4 tuning in order to avoid the muddiness that the bass E1 gave us in the first experiment. So I guess now we should just start with some 3-note power chords. For fifths, you kind of see why that inverted idea came to mind initially, with the index finger needed to fit behind the others this time. Using the normal fingering, we actually get a kind of minor third triad, with the third being the root note. So that makes this a major triad, then a sus4, but instead of thinking about this over third combination, I like to think of it better as first the root, then fifth, then suspended second, or a sus2 chord with one finger. So for more pleasantly spaced voicing, this becomes the minor chord, then the major, then the sus4. Back when I also tried diatonic thirds on my 8th string, we had major and minor voicings too with one finger. The difference this time is the third is now placed after the 5th, which is particularly useful when your root note is starting lower to make it sound less muddy. Unlike power chords with 2 notes being octaves of each other, which technically doesn't even make them chords, these chords have 3 distinct notes in them. This gives them more color, if you will, allowing us to give them actual names like major, minor, and diminished, or augmented as well. We can even start adding more notes to get a jazzy kind of feel. Just adding 4 fifths in a row with one finger, we get a sus2 add 6 chord. The next string after that is actually the normal major third of the root. Then the next string is a 7th. Starting with our major triad fingering, adding a 4th note, we can find a 7th note up here, or just the octave. It's a little difficult trying to find further fingerings in a bar chord sense if you want to try more stuff on your own. Perhaps utilizing more open note chords have more potential, and there's probably more possibilities if we just tuned a couple of strings up or down a half step, just like how guitar isn't perfect fourths. So what do you guys think? Is this interesting or useful? Should we try a different register or try some alterations? As much as I thought that the first inverted idea was a dud, I'm starting to think that those chord fingerings may lend themselves better. Maybe there needs to be even more revisiting in the future. Of course, you orchestral string players out there are well familiar with fifths tuning and could perhaps enlighten us on techniques and theory we may have missed that we should try. So stay tuned, or check the description if there already are some updates by the time you're seeing this. For now though, enough said. For early video access, raw instrument tracks, and more exclusives, find our community on Patreon and consider adding your support.
Said too much.